It's about researching and finding the right broadband opportunities. My name is Lucas Lemonds. I'm an American Connection Corps member serving with Generation West Virginia. Some housekeeping rules. This webinar is being recorded, so if you don't want your video to be on the recording, please feel free to turn it off now. Also, please be sure to mute your mic. There will be time for a Q&A at the end of this session, and also feel free to drop your questions in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Annie Stroud.
Right. Hi, everybody. If you just joined, Lucas just mentioned this is being recorded. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. I'm just going to go over a few intro slides and we'll get right to our presentation. So Generation West Virginia, if you aren't familiar, is a statewide nonprofit. We work to ensure young people in West Virginia have the skills and opportunities to access well-paying careers in the Mountain State so they can choose to stay here. We've got 4 different programs: Career Connector, Fellowship, New Force, and Broadband. And Broadband is why we're here today. So let's go ahead and keep moving. So just again, some context, if you haven't joined us previously, why broadband? We realized pretty early on that broadband was kind of an essential piece to young people being able to find those meaningful careers and stay in the state, both for quality of life, education, all of the reasons why we use the internet at home. We kind of have 2 different program areas. So one is infrastructure, so looking directly at the need for high-speed broadband infrastructure. Currently almost 30% of West Virginia households lacked fixed broadband availability, so that's wireline broadband availability. We have low population density, challenging terrain, and there was kind of historically a lack of support for folks who are applying for broadband development for funding in the past. This has all shifted now with the Infrastructure Act funds or BEAD, but it's brought up kind of the next part, which is the digital adoption. So looking at ensuring that once we have the lines run, once people have access to the physical infrastructure of broadband, how do we make sure that they can actually connect and utilize those resources to take advantage of all of the opportunities that it offers. Currently, about 19% of West Virginia population reports not using the internet at all. And of them, of the population, saying that a lot of them report not even using a PC or a tablet. So the mobile internet use is their only way of interacting with the online world, which is a great opportunity if you have nothing, but there's a lot of things, working online, educational resources, even things like setting up telehealth appointments and reading your charts online are really difficult if you don't actually have the knowledge or the actual devices. So we've really started looking at, again, this digital adoption work and trying to help folks figure out how to help people not just connect to the internet, but safely use it. Next page. So what we're doing, we have a wraparound technical assistance model that we use. We've used it in infrastructure. We're still able to do that now too with the digital access and adoption. Basically, we offer pro bono technical assistance for any of those gaps that a project or a community might be facing when it comes to putting together a successful funding application. So whether that's engineering, general project development support, grant writing, legal assistance, partnership development, funding strategies, looking at alternative sources, any of those kinds of things, we're able to kind of step in and say, all right, what are the pieces that we're missing? How do we move forward here? We also were able to do a planning process last year with 18 counties across the state, thanks to an Appalachian Regional Commission ARISE grant through Connect Humanity. So we were able to develop 18 county level digital equity plans. And then, we also are working on things like this, education, network building. The field of doing digital access and adoption work in the state is very new and has been pretty interesting because to make them work, you need to pull together a lot of stakeholders who may or may not have worked together before. So we've definitely seen that as a need and are trying to fill that role of pulling people together, making sure that the right people are talking to build these successful projects for longer term sustainability. Because in many ways, this adoption work is the insurance policy for our infrastructure work that we're laying. If we don't have subscribers at the end of the day, the providers are not going to be able to maintain those lines on into the future. So how do we build up our local population so that they have the skills, the devices, the knowledge, and are able to actually take advantage of those resources and keep them active moving forward? So that's a little bit about us. And now I'm going to pass this back over to Lucas to introduce our guest speaker today.
Yes, we're excited to announce our guest speaker today, Devon McDaniel. She is a grant and technical writer for the broadband workforce area at the WVU Grant Resource Center. She has a strong background in nonprofit leadership, grant writing, and capacity building. So we're excited to see what knowledge she brings to our discussion today. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Devon.
Hello. As Lucas mentioned, I'm Devon. I'm a grant writer with the West Virginia Grant Resource Center. So my main focus is broadband grants. So we're kind of going to go over a little bit just about the Grant Resource Center, and then some tools to find grants, and then we'll finish off just kind of looking at the BEAD workforce grant a little bit and what it's about, and just some more information about it. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So I just wanted to share our mission a little bit at the Grant Resource Center. So it is to help small communities and other eligible applicants maximize federal and private dollars from grant applications to support economic development initiatives across the state. And a really important note here is that we are a free resource. So there is no cost if you need help finding a grant or any of the things that we're going to kind of go over that we do. It's completely free to utilize us as a resource. So this is just a brief team overview. We are a partnership between West Virginia University and Marshall. So we work really closely together. Even though it's kind of two different sides, we make up one great resource team. So we have our Marshall lead and then our WVU lead who actually founded the centers. And then we have a co-director on both sides. And then our public relations coordinator and our project manager work on both sides. And then we have grant writers on the Marshall side and the WVU side as well. But as I mentioned, we work really closely together, kind of just to give some insight. I am a WVU grad, but I work on the Marshall side. So we all are big one happy family here. And you could work with any of the grant writers that are there. If you are working on broadband, it will most likely be me, but we have a really great team who specializes in many different areas to help you find the grants and then also write them as well. So these are just kind of some common barriers that we have seen a lot, and they are that there's sometimes a really short turnaround on applications, and that can be a barrier if you need partnership support or maybe board support that take, a little bit longer to get. And then another one is also just an experience with large project management, which can go into compliance and staffing. Alignment of technical assistance, application doesn't meet funding agency requirements or the description or maybe the metrics. And then also the need for more partners and relationships with the entity. And then also compliance can sometimes be a barrier, and then submission issues. And then our last one that we kind of want to highlight is the identification of matching funds prior to submission. So we do point these all out because these are all areas that, we can kind of address and help you with and see if there's areas that we can maybe help you find partners or, help you with compliance and things like that, and then also help you submit. So we really focus on the pre-award process here at the Grant Resource Center. So that can be any of the items below, and we always say that we meet our partners where they're at. So if you know what grant you want to go after, you have a really good start on it, but maybe you just want someone to kind of do a review of it. Make sure that you're on the right page. You want to make sure that it's aligned with all of the grant, what it's requiring. We can just provide a review. Maybe you're on the opposite side where you have no idea what grant you want, but you have a great project in mind and you really need help finding that grant and then also writing that. We can help you with that too. So we really help in these four main areas, which is plan development, and then finding source identification, grant prep, and then grant submission. We do say that You as the partner will always hit that final submit button on the grant, but up until that point, we will help you with everything else, even if that's just getting into the grant portal and uploading everything. You know, some grant portals are really easy to work with, some are more complicated. We can help you do that. We can help you find partners to maybe strengthen your grant proposal. And then, as I mentioned, we can also help you actually find the grant if you know kind of maybe what you're looking to do, or you have a program that you want to expand. That is something that we can kind of utilize our resources and expertise to actually help you find a grant that would match for your agency as well. So then we also wanted to just kind of highlight some different training opportunities that we offer on our side as well. So we offer a Grants 101 workshop, which is an in-person workshop. You would request it on our website and we would actually come to you all, and we would kind of just spend like a whole day going over each aspect of grants, some tips and tricks, and then kind of doing some like one-on-one work. That's a great place to ask additional questions. We have done a couple of those already, so if you are interested in that, you can go to our website and fill out a form for that. We also offer live grant assistance sessions, which we call our LGAS. That is virtual. We try and host them at least twice a month. So those kind of are a breakdown of different areas of grants that we really focus on. So, for example, we do have one tomorrow at noon, and that one is really focused on just budgets. So we are just going to spend, half an hour to an hour kind of breaking down what goes in a budget, how to make an effective budget where you can find some of those numbers you need. And then we'll also kind of be focusing on the broadband grant as well. So looking at, what's an eligible expense, what's an ineligible expense. So if you are looking for a broadband grant or just grants in general, those are great things to join online and just kind of learn a little bit more about grants and the aspects of grants. And then we also offer a micro-credential course as well on grant writing. And then this is just a little bit about our impact that we kind of wanted to highlight. So the Grant Resource Center has only been around for 2 years, but this is all the impact that we've made so far. So we have over $43 million of project funding secured so far, and we've actually impacted all 55 counties in West Virginia. And then we have over 6,000 West Virginias that have been connected with grant resources since our opening just 2 short years ago. So we hope to still continue this great work and get more resources out to West Virginia. So we're going to kind of jump in now here. So that was a little bit about the Grant Resource Center. I will have some links to our website at the end of this, and you can always send me a message, or if you want more information, check out our website. But now we're kind of going to do a dive into where to really find your grants at. So the areas that we're going to focus on are going to be our federal grants and our foundation grants. There is some more funding opportunity databases that are highlighted below. We're not going to go too much into those today. And then I will give you a resource for state grants as well. But these are going to be the areas that you kind of want to start just to search and look for. And we'll take a deeper dive into all these websites on the next few slides. So we're going to look at finding federal grants first. So a great resource to use for federal grants is going to be grants.gov. It's really a centralized location for grant seekers to find and apply for federal funding opportunities. So when you go to the website, this is what it's going to look like. And then there's more than 1,000 different grant programs across all the federal grant making agencies. And this is going to, like I said, just kind of be a really good centralized location of where you can search for different grants and see all the different ones that are available and what they require as well. So this is where you're going to see you can search grants here at the bottom. So if you go to the grants.gov website and click that search grants, on the next slide, you'll see what that looks like when you click that. So this is going to kind of be that database. So you have your basic search criteria where you can use just kind of keywords. So for example, if you're looking for a broadband grant, that's where you could type broadband and it's going to pull up pretty much any grant on this website that has any kind of mention of broadband. And then you also want to look at your eligibility too, which is the other highlighted box here. So that's going to be who is eligible to actually apply to these grants. So you want to make sure to scroll through and click what kind of organization you are, whether that's a city or a nonprofit or, whatever you might be applying as, because that's going to narrow it down just a little bit more so that you're not looking through grants that just aren't at all going to apply for your organization. But this is a really great resource to kind of just see all of the grants that might apply to you. And it's a great way to use those keywords. Um, Even if it's not broadband, if you have some other projects that you might want to look into, for example, you could, just put like youth programming or healthy food or whatever your project, keywords might be. You can put it in there and it's going to pull up the grants that have those words in them. So then this kind of just goes into a little bit more about some of the things that are going to be on this grants.gov website. So there's currently 3,000 grant opportunities posted, which includes currently open or forecasted. So currently open means that they are accepting applications. You can go in, you can apply to them right now. Forecasted more so means that it's like a potential grant. It means that it's not open right this second, but that either it is, open every single year. They're pretty sure it's going to be open again this year. And that's a great way for, even if you can't apply to it right now, you can go in, click that, forecasted grant and start looking through, what eligible expenses there are or who can apply to the grant and things like that. And you can kind of start and work through the beginning stages of that grant. Even if you can't apply for it, you can start to prepare for it. So that's a great way to start getting an idea of maybe a grant that you want to apply for and kind of get that plan started for applying to that. And then it also has the keyword searches, which we mentioned, and then also advanced searches. And then another great thing is you can actually subscribe to opportunities. So that is, you can subscribe and put in, kind of what you're looking for, and it will send you an email when maybe that forecasted grant that you were looking at opens or when a new grant opens that would maybe apply to you. So that's a great way that you can kind of stay connected with grants.gov and those grants and kind of just get emailed reminders and things like that for grants that you might want to apply for. So on grants.gov, they also have some really good applicant resources that we wanted to point out. So just the few that we have listed here are, they have something on how to apply for grants and just kind of how to get started, an overview of kind of just some tips and tricks that might be helpful. They also have an intro to applying on grants.gov. Federal grants typically are a little bit lengthier, take a little bit more prep work and work actually writing the grant. So this is going to be kind of, again, just tips and tricks on how to actually use the portal and apply and what all you're going to need for that, for a federal grant. And then also how to register with grants.gov. And they have a grants learning center with trainings and different resources for grant writing. And they also have a community blog, which typically highlights just some grant writing in general, tips, tricks, and best practices. So that's kind of a great resource in addition to trainings like these and the ones that we offer that you can go on your own time and kind of just like look through the applicant resources and gain some insight and some tips and tricks so that you can, be prepared to write your grants and submit them. Okay, so then if you kind of want to go to just the actual federal agency websites, that's another way that you can locate federal grants. So that grants.gov is going to be really more so like an overview of most of the grants available federally. But you can also go to, for example, on here we have like the US Department of Education, we have ARC, energy.gov, and then the EDA. So you can go on their actual websites and typically they'll have an area of the grants, and that's going to give you probably a little bit more information, or if you know that you're definitely going to be doing something education related. Then you could, like I mentioned, go to the U.S. Department of Education website and look through their grants and see what they have and see what would apply to your program or project, and then have the portal and everything on there. So that's just kind of another option for finding federal grants, is identifying what area it's going to fit in and then going to that website. So for example, for broadband, you can visit different broadband agencies and then see what grants they have listed on there, read through them and see if they would apply for your project. And if you want to apply for them, that will have your portal. It will probably also have an overview, the program procedures, everything like that, that you can look through and make sure that all of those align with your project as well. So we're going to move on from federal grants onto foundation grants. So our first resource that we use a lot is Candid. So they have what is called a foundation directory and a quick start tool. So the quick start tool is nice because it's free. They do have paid versions. So if you know that you're going to be, looking into and applying to a lot of foundation grants, that is something that you could look at, is getting kind of like the updated paid for version. But for the quick start tool, like I mentioned, it's a free resource and it's going to provide information on private and community foundations. And then you can also learn about their funding priorities and previously funded projects, which is really nice because you can kind of see if they're going to align to your project. Of course, it doesn't have to be exactly the same, but if it's, maybe they've never funded an organization that does the work that you all do, it might be better suited to kind of go and either contact them and see if that is something that they would be willing to fund, or to look for other funding opportunities. So that's a great way to learn about, maybe what they put more emphasis on, and see if it would be a good fit. And then on Candid, you can search by organization name, type, location, or their EIN. So this is what the quick start tool looks like. It's just asks, like I mentioned, if you want to look up by the organizational name, or you can look up by the location. So that would be a great area where maybe you don't know exactly what foundation you want to apply for, but you want to look at the ones in West Virginia and see what West Virginia has to offer. You could go to that organization location, type in West Virginia, and then it's going to show you all of the foundation grants that are available in this area. So that's the example that they listed, was that organizational location was West Virginia. And then it's just going to pull up. So it says here that there's 416 grant makers in the West Virginia area. So of course, that doesn't mean that, every single one of those is going to be something that's going to, align with what your project is or the area. But we can see here, there's Charleston, Parkersburg, Morgantown, Bluefield, just on those first little, excuse me, ones that we can see. So you can start to go through and kind of look and see, if you're in Morgantown, maybe you want to click on Hazel Ruby McQueen and see, what they typically fund, if it aligns to you, and get more information on that foundation grant. And then it will also tell you what you need to apply, what forms you're going to need, and then also have that portal for it as well. So another kind of resource for foundation grants is going to be Instrumental. So you can use Instrumental to search for private, corporate, state, and federal funding opportunities. And it currently has information on many, many funders, as you can see, and it has active funding opportunities as well, over 12,000. So Instrumental is going to be another good resource. As you can see, it has a free trial. So again, if you're an organization that knows that you're really going to be going after foundation grants, maybe try the 14-day trial, see if it's a tool that works for you in your organization, and then possibly invest in getting the actual paid subscription to it. It does make it nice because it just kind of is all that information in one area, and you're not, having to search hundreds of different websites or anything like that. It's just all right in that one website. So this is what Instrumental looks like once you get onto the actual site. So here we just did an example of grants for 501c3s. in West Virginia. So you can search for grants and funders by the name, the focus area, or location. And like I said, the free version is going to provide limited information on funders and funding opportunities. So it'll kind of just show you maybe like the name of the grant and then like some very brief information. But a nice thing about that is if you don't want to pay for the full version, then you could go and search that grant and find the full information on it as well. But like I said too, it kind of has the focus area, which I think is really nice. So, if you don't really know where to start or what funding opportunity you want to go after, a great way would be, like it says on here, grants for youth programs. If you know that you have a youth program that you want to fund, that would be a great way to kind of start that search and see kind of just where to go and what ones would maybe align to your programming. So then our other one is going to be Council on Foundations. So this is, again, a community foundation locator, and it has developed an interactive community foundation locator with information on all community foundations in the U.S. So you can see here we have it narrowed down to West Virginia, and it has, kind of where those community foundations are. And then community foundations are foundations created for the purpose of managing funds for the benefit of the communities that they serve within that defined geographic area. So here you can see that you can search for a community foundation by name or by state. And then if you click on a dot, it will show you detailed information about a particular foundation, including the name, address, email address, website, lead point of contact, and accreditation. So you can see here that we went and searched West Virginia and then clicked on a specific one, and it kind of tells us more information about that foundation. So then we can either go to their website and see more information, or we could even email the lead point of contact to build that relationship with them and then find out more information on that community foundation as well. So that's kind of a big overview on where to find grants. That was a couple of different resources that you can start to use. Like I mentioned, we'll go a little bit more into the West Virginia Grant Resource Center at the end as well. But sometimes just finding the grant really is the hardest part. You might, have this great idea for a program, but you just don't know how to fund it. And like I mentioned at the beginning, that is something that the Grant Resource Center does help with. You don't have to have a funding source identified to begin working with us. You can just have an idea or have a program that you either want to expand or keep, maybe start in the first place. And if you fill out our form, we will kind of start to help you identify some of these different grants that might help you and what's going to be a better fit, if that's, federal or if that's a foundation. It just kind of depends on your capacity and programs and things like that. Something that we didn't mention in the PowerPoint, but I just wanted to make a note of too, is state grants. So grants.wv.gov is where you're going to find all your state grants for West Virginia. So they have very nicely just kind of compiled them all onto that one website. So that is a resource that you can use as well to start looking through if you want to go after a state funding source. So we're going to talk a little bit about the BEAD program. It was already kind of given an overview. Annie kind of talked to us about, in general, but this is the specific grant that I work on. So we just kind of wanted to kind of take a deeper dive into it a little bit and give you some information about what this funding is. So the BEAD program is a $42 billion federal program that's going to ensure that all Americans have internet access. And it's funding partnerships between states or territories, communities, and stakeholders to build infrastructure and increase high-speed internet adoption, as Annie mentioned. And BEAD really prioritizes underserved locations with no internet access or service under 25.3 MBMs. So this is kind of just a one-pager about the BEAD program. And Annie mentioned a lot of this too, of, where we are and then where we're going. And then the timeline and then the bead program details are on there as well, but we'll kind of take a deeper dive into that on the next slides. So West Virginia received $1.2 billion allocation from NTIA to connect all unserved or underserved areas and community anchor institutions to high-speed, reliable internet service. And just kind of an important note here is that it is the second highest per capita allocation of BEAD funding across the country. So specifically, the BEAD Workforce Development Program is the program and funding source that I mainly work on. So um, the BEAD funding is kind of a two-part thing. So the first part is really the infrastructure. This workforce development is the other part. So this is going to be getting funding to help build up this workforce that we're going to really need when all this infrastructure is going to be being put in place. So the goal of the Broadband Industry Workforce Development Grant Program is to empower West Virginia institutions to expand education and training opportunities that leverage existing programs and exemplary models so more West Virginians can enter the broadband industry. So here we have just a little bit about the program priorities. So the WVDED will prioritize programs that are collaboratively developed and result in a short-term credential of value and or include work-based learning. So I do just want to make a note. As you can see, there is one of them that is grayed out. That's wraparound services. So originally, when this grant was announced, wraparound services were going to be an eligible expense under the grant. Now it is not going to be an eligible expense, but there is still a priority put on these wraparound services, so childcare, transportation, any of these barriers. They do still want to see applicants identifying the barriers and how they can address and kind of get them access to these wraparound services. So that might be just identifying other partners who are already fully funded, who can be brought into this program and offer services, or it might be another grant application to fund the wraparound services, but it will no longer be an eligible expense through the BEAD workforce development. So we did just want to make note of that because it did just recently change and there's been some communications and things about it. But the other areas are going to be post-secondary programs, strong career pathways, flexible tailored training, standardized high quality credentialing, and then also our soft skills training. So this is going to be our eligible applicants for this BEAD Workforce Development Program. So that can be anything from broadband industry associations, our career and technical education institutions, county boards of education, employers, higher education institutes, K through 12 schools, and then also public-private partnerships. So as you can see, it's a pretty broad range of eligible applicants, and this is because they want to see really collaborative applications. They want to see multiple different groups or organizations working together to really create effective programming that is, leading to these program priorities and really increasing our workforce for the broadband industry. So this one I did notice when I was going over. It's a little bit out of place, but that's okay. We'll go over this and then it's going to skip back to bead. So this is just a little bit, again, about the West Virginia Grant Resource Center. So our topics of focus are workforce development training, which is, of course, what we're talking about today. But it also is economic development, community development, and outdoor rec, job creation and retention, and then infrastructure and site development. And then you can kind of just see our services, which we already went over, so I'm not going to go into detail about them. And then there's also a QR code on here and our website. So that's really where you're going to want to start if you would like to work with us on your grants. That's just going to kind of be a form to let us know kind of where you are and what you're needing help with, and then we'll reach out to you after that. So then back to bead. So this is the program overview. We don't have a set date of when it's going to open yet. So I will say that we are still actively working with partners. We are kind of getting grant ready. So we're doing everything that we can while we wait for this grant to open. We have heard that it's going to open up sometime in spring of 2025. So we're kind of just waiting for that official date. And if you are a partner with us and you're working on this grant with us, we will email you when we hear that it officially opens. But the WVDED is anticipating having anywhere between 20 to 50 million from the BREED program into this grant opportunity. And this is kind of just a one-pager overview about the Workforce Development Grant Program. So you can see on there some of the things that we went over, which would be the eligible entities, the program priorities, and then also the evaluation criteria is on there. So you can see that credential of value, a joint development application, efficiency, cost of participants, and then wraparound services are on there. So another note, as I mentioned with wraparound services, it is still an evaluation criteria, even though it's not going to be funded because they do want to see applicants identifying those barriers to students and then working with them to make sure to still help them. Um, but like I said, we don't have an official opening date yet. We are still working on it with grant applications and partners just to kind of, get them started thinking about what they might want to do with this program, developing some budgets and things like that. So if you are interested in this grant, please still reach out to us. We can start getting started on this and like I said, kind of be grant ready when we do get that official opening. It's going to be a pretty short turnaround, so please don't wait if this is something that you would be interested in applying for your organization. And then this is just a little bit about the eligible costs for the Workforce Development Program. So that can be equipment, it can be facility rentals, curriculum development, professional services, which can include project management or marketing, etc. It can also include training and professional development for staff. It can include scholarships for program participants, which is, I think, important to note that does not count as a wraparound service, as we know of. So that is going to be like tuition assistance and things like that you can still apply for as an eligible cost through this grant. And then also internal labor costs and other eligible costs are all going to be things that this grant can cover for the BEAD workforce development. And then we always just like to kind of wrap up by saying thank you to our partners. So as I mentioned, this is a project between WVU and Marshall, but we're also funded by all the amazing people that are listed on this slide, and it would not be possible without them. It's been a really successful project over the past 2 years, and we really want to see it continue to be successful. We know that grant writing there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of organizations maybe don't have that capacity or experience, and that's really what we're here for is to, help bring grants into West Virginia and to help you all with whatever you might need within the grant writing world. So we always just like to say thank you to all the people who support us and have funded us so far. And then this is just a little bit again about our information. So this is what our main page of our website is going to look like. You can either scan that QR code or our website is listed at the bottom. If you just look up WV Grant Center, it'll come up. But you can either apply for assistance if you need it on here. There's a request assistance and then a request training button on there. And then we also have a newsletter that goes out that will keep you up to date about any trainings that we're having. And then we also put on our social medias of grant opportunities that we notice. So that's a great way to kind of keep up to date on things coming out and to be aware of. So we always recommend to sign up for that newsletter or follow us on social media so that you can see those funding opportunities, any events that we'll be at, and just some latest updates about the Grant Resource Center. So you can scan that or again, go to our website if you'd like any information on the newsletter or social media. And then I'll take some questions too if anyone has them. But like I mentioned, if you are kind of interested in this grant or any other broadband grant or any grant in general, you can always reach out to us with any questions or to become an actual client with us. Again, it's a free resource. But does anyone have questions, on all the things that we covered in this short time, either finding grant resources, or just the resource center in general, or the broadband grant? I know there's like 3 presentations in this short one presentation here.
Right, now's the time if anyone has them.
Yes.
If not, like Devon said, the Grant Resource Center website's very informative. Newsletter, what social media is all really good places to follow if you're thinking about looking at various grant opportunities.
Absolutely.
If you think of anything here over the next little bit, feel free to drop them on. Devon's stuck with us for a few more minutes. But again, just kind of to wrap this around, because I know, a lot of the folks that may or may not be on today are sometimes in these very early stages, especially around some of this digital literacy work, digital skilling. This is kind of a field that, again, is kind of new for the state, and the partners we're bringing together are kind of new. So, I like to, when we're talking with folks, think about, all right, do you have your project idea? Do you have an idea of what you might need in terms of a budget? If so, that's probably a really good time to start thinking about grant writing specifically, finding the right grants, matching your projects up with that. If you aren't quite there yet, you know the kinds of things you want to do, maybe what the need is. That's where we're really happy to kind of step in and walk through the asset mapping process. What do you have on the ground? What's going on? Do you know all the people? Have you talked to your emergency coordinators and your family resource centers and your local businesses, just to try and help figure out what resources already exist in your community? Because I think, especially right now, it's going to be very important that we build as much as possible on the resources that we already have, try and leverage what we've already got going on, and supplement and add capacity to who's already doing stuff. It's going to be a little bit harder to start brand new out of the box projects here for a little while. So, we really want to be able to spend the time to kind of think through how to do that. And that's where kind of that wraparound piece comes. So again, depending on where you are, you might be ready for grants. We can help with some of that, but the Grant Resource Center is a really great resource. They've got a great team, and really, really can help, especially on like finding the grants. I've seen that in action a few times, so that's a really great place to go. But again, if you're still kind of thinking through what those projects can look like, we're happy to pop in a variety of different ways. I think the code there maybe goes to our TA form. I can't remember. Either that or to our website. You can reach out to myself or Lucas or anyone in our team to kind of get connected to, again, that kind of pre-project development coaching support that we're really, really happy to jump in on. The other piece too that I'll mention, especially as relates to some of these pieces, is depending on the scope of what you're thinking about, whether it's, again, a digital literacy program, device distribution type programs, is you might have a few folks, maybe next county over, that are thinking about the same thing. So we'd love to try and think about how to combine projects potentially to make them a little bit more attractive to some of the funders that might want to fund this stuff into the future. So thank you again so much, Devon, for sharing all of those really great resources. Again, it's such a great opportunity for everybody across the state to have this available. Really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me too. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I'll hand this back to Lucas to hit on a few closing slides. And again, if you have any questions, pop them in. Now's the time.
There we go. So some grants that are going to be opening soon, potentially. We still don't know the specific dates, but the West Virginia State Digital Opportunity Capacity Subgrants, those will be opening soon, hopefully. Also, like Devon said, we're waiting on the state broadband workforce grants as well. We did want to have a little note on terminology. So the term digital equity has been used for many years to describe the goal of creating the conditions where all residents have equal access to these online resources. While the definition of this term still accurately describes the work, due to policies put forth by new administration, we will likely see a lot of this work described as digital opportunity, digital or broadband adoption, bridging the digital divide, many other terms like that. But we just kind of wanted to highlight that regardless of the words used, the need still remains. So it's crucial that digital equity and broadband access initiatives continue to prioritize accessibility, affordability, and inclusivity for all. And then here's a little bit about how you can get involved with Generation West Virginia. So you could apply for our technical assistance, like Annie said. That QR code goes there as well. We are having another webinar next month. It is going to be on crafting success. It's actually writing and winning those broadband access grant applications. And we do have a guest speaker who is a grant writer as well. And then finally, the American Connection Corps, they are looking for new host sites and members. That is the organization that I'm hosted with Generation West Virginia through. So if you're interested in being a host site, or if you know anybody who might be interested in serving a year of service with ACC, please feel free to reach out to me or go to the American Connection Corps website. And then exciting news, we are hosting our first ever workforce conference. It's called Pathways to Progress. It is going to be on May 8th in Charleston, West Virginia. You can register through the QR code, or you can go to generationwestvirginia.org and you'll find the registration form there as well. And then finally, here is my contact information, Annie's contact information, Generation West Virginia website. And most importantly, to stay up to date on all things Generation West Virginia, please subscribe to our newsletter. And now is the time for any questions, final comments.
Right. Well, hearing none, thanks again, Devon. Really appreciate your time. And thanks everybody for hopping on today. Enjoy the beautiful day, and we'll talk to you next month.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
All
day.
right. Bye. Take care.